What we decided to call this was Agentic AI Tsunami. So what do you guys think we called it Tsunami? It's just coming at us, right? So let's see what we can do about that. So one of the things that I was thinking about is that we are in the midst of this tsunami. And in a tsunami, and even after a tsunami, it's very chaotic. So who's used prompt engineering in here? Was that a part of your vernacular 2 years ago? Maybe even a year ago, was it a part of your vernacular? Now there are certificates and stuff like this telling you how to interact with things like ChatGPT and DeepSeek. Has anybody used DeepSeek? Yeah? Do we know what that one is? Yeah? Oh, don't be shy. This is, yeah, it's an LLM. It's one of the things that has been put out that supposedly was able to be done for a lot more economically than OpenAI. There's a lot of drama and stuff that's folding around that or unfolding around that. But one thing that I find interesting is that you see so many LLMs that are popping up, the large language models, small language models that are very specific to certain tasks, and then being able to interact with them and kind of understand what they do. So the reason I asked about, there we go. The reason I asked about this, okay, let's ask a large language model, show me a picture of chaos. So you can do all kinds of things with these, and so you can have a little bit of fun with it. So you can see here that this is the first picture of chaos that it gave me. I'm like, okay, well, let's kind of hone in a little bit more. So show me a picture of chaos in the AI space. So now we have like some facts and figures and a little brain and a robot and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more honed in. I think one of the best pieces of prompt engineering that I have seen was I was talking to a group in Mississippi at the end of last year, and a guy came up to me and he said, the best way that I've used this, and of course this was on a personal basis, the best way that I've used this is that my neighbor kept coming to me and kept coming right by my bedroom window 7 o'clock in the morning with a leaf blower. So what I did is I went into ChatGPT, or your chat engine of choice, but for him it was ChatGPT, and said, how do I stop my neighbor from doing this in the persona of a preacher? So so you were able to, you can do that. You can say, okay, what type of persona do I want? So there's a lot of different things that you could do. But sometimes we feel just kind of overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of that. And so hence that kind of that tsunami. So let's talk about, how we can kind of unravel some of the mystery about this kind of big wave. And the waves just keep coming, right? So who knows what we're going to be talking about? We might be talking about cosmic AI next year. We'll see. Okay, so one of the first things is what is agentic AI? And why now? Like I said, one of the things that people have asked me a lot about is, what is the difference? So let's talk a little bit about that and so forth. And so with generative AI on the one end, it's a type of, they're all artificial intelligence. It's just a type of artificial intelligence that is focusing on creating content. And so, it creates content based on patterns that it's learned. So Forrester, though, for this year has said, hey, you need to be looking at agentic AI too. So, it's the top emerging technology for 2025. I'm sure we've all heard it and been bombarded by it, and probably have a lot of people contacting us about it. We might have people coming to us and saying, hey, what are you doing about this in the space? For Agentic AI, it's a type of artificial intelligence that uses AI agents to accomplish tasks. And so we're gonna click into this a little bit more. We've probably all heard of RPA. Who's heard of RPA? Who has RPA in their shop? Different things that, different groups and stuff that do robotic process automation. And so we have it at Southern, and I think we've been able to probably make a lot of strides in that space. But what I will say is that Agentic AI kind of takes it to the next step. Because with RPA, you're doing a little bit more of just automating tasks that are repetitive. Whereas in Agentic AI, you're making decisions. It's going out, and one of the things that can really concern people about it is that to learn, it uses trial and error. And you think about that. So one of the things we're going to talk about moving into that, or moving further along, is trial and error. What about responsible AI and ethics? And oh my gosh, there comes the tsunami again, right? So let's break it down a little bit. So just trying to work through some of the differences and some of the things that to consider. So with Agentic AI, that's your autonomous problem solver. That's your teenager. I kid you a little bit. The autonomous part, probably not so much. But the generative AI, that's your creative powerhouse. Agentic AI, trial and error. There's that trial and error that we're going to talk about a little bit more. And, it's looking to learn about and navigate its environment. So you're working through your environment. It has more, you think of it, it's kind of like going around a room and mingling, right? You're working through that environment. You're looking to accomplish something. Maybe it's to get to the other side or any number of things. But with a creative powerhouse, so that uses something called neural networks. So what it's really looking to do is say, okay, what happened last time in this space? And let me see if I can break this down and reassemble some of these things and what the highest likelihood is of this. Who's ever used generative AI and had a really weird answer? Yeah? I hear laughs. What's something that you have gotten back from it that you thought was fun?
I ended up getting
Congratulations. Yeah, I love it. One of the guys that works for me is a data architect. And he went in the other day, and it told him that he was the CIO of our company. So, you have to be able to, so that goes back to that human in a loop and being able to really hone in on validating the type of stuff that you're getting. Of course, not trying to just point out anything that's negative, because it's a lot of times you're going to get some really darn good content from it. So moving into that second area, Agentic AI is, let's achieve a goal. It's an overachiever. It's, what's my goal? I'm ready to go. And then generative AI content. It's all about, I want to be creative, but I don't necessarily have comprehension of what I'm giving you. I'm giving you what the highest probability is of what you probably want. So it would probably make a good lawyer. I'm joking, but no offense to any attorneys in the room. And so Agentic AI, dynamic in nature. It makes decisions, it takes actions, it adapts to new data. And generative AI is static in nature. And static doesn't mean bad. It's just, it is what it is. It operates within the guidelines of data that's used to train a model. So I've had people come and say, okay, I have been asking it questions about X, Y, and Z, and it's not answering them. But if it's something that has happened after that model has been trained, it's not going to know the answer. So if you go in and you start asking it about current events, if you're using an LLM that was trained before, let's say the Queen died, you could say who's the leader of England, and it might say her. Now I think they've gotten smart enough to say, hey, don't ask me that, I don't know. I think that this last one is a pretty good example. So with Agentic AI, it can work with generative AI. They don't need to be mutually exclusive. In fact, a lot of times you'll have agents here that are actually checking what you're doing over here and validating it. And that's called typically called some type of adversarial network that can be, automated. They call it actually a GAN, if anybody's interested in talking about that or looking that up. So generative AI can create a recipe based on your preferences. Hey, I really want something that's low sugar, but tastes good. It would generate something for you. Not really sure if it's going to be tasty. We'll see. I'm just kidding. But can work. But generative AI can actually take that recipe and cook it for you. So if you think about that, that's kind of the mind space or the head space that we can be in. So this I wanted to throw up here because we are going to have it's kind of meant to be an eye chart because we're going to have a test on this later and see who gets to buy dinner. No, I'm just kidding. But it's really just meant to show you this is just startups in the space. So think about this. Who remembers all of the internet startups, the .coms from eons ago? How many still exist? And I really think, so this is where we're getting into Kim's conjecture. I really think that you're probably going to see some consolidation of some of these over time. You're probably going to see some that actually maybe get consolidated or get bought by other companies or so forth. And this is not me, backing any vendor. This is just showing you kind of just the vastness of the landscape that you're seeing, which is why we feel so overwhelmed. And each of these people are probably reaching out and saying, hey, we have a best of breed in this. And you're like, well, how is this different? So what the aim here is really to focus on this column and for us to understand a little bit more about how to deal with this kind of bases is loaded type of scenario. And one thing that I will say is that now this is just really talking about startups, but there are a lot of very seasoned companies that are creating agentic AI frameworks and having agentic AI offerings. And I hear that you might even be able to hear about one in the innovation space that SAS is announcing. So it'll be interesting. I do want to go by and learn a little bit about that. So let's focus on these kind of areas. And so what I've tried to do is tried to break it down to the types of agentic AI. I'm sure there's more. I'm sure there might be more. And it's also one of those things that whenever you have one website will say there's 5 different types, another website will say there's 4 or what have you, but we're going to go with 8 today. And some of the ones that I really want to call out. So who in here does some type of development? Yeah, a lot of, I hear some people do Power BI and, so somebody that does some type of development, you're starting to see a lot of coding assistants that are coming out there that are doing smarter software development that can write larger pieces of code. I think you still have to know what to ask it and stuff, but it can help, and it might even be able to test. You're seeing a lot of things that are being able to test. We talked about some of these things that are testing your large language models, and that's really going to fall somewhere in here because it actually is leveraging the model, but it's also working to understand it. And so we have that. So it's kind of an additional evolution that's moving forward there. You have a lot of things that are happening as far as being able to run models. So you have your model serving. And that's just really being able to run them, fine-tune them, deploy them, all the stuff that's not as fun and sexy on the back end, but is required. So you have things that are helping orchestrate these, that are, that's the person that's the puppeteer kind of behind the scenes. And, you think of it, and I have all these marionettes, and those are my Agentic AI, and that's kind of your orchestration framework. You have certain ways that these things have to be stored and represented behind the scenes. In Agentic AI, really in the background is like reinforcement learning. So if that's just a keyword, if you're ever interested in, it's reinforcement learning kind of mixed with deep learning. So if you think about some of the examples over here. So I thought we could play a game, trying to wake people up after lunch, so this will be better than coffee. Name the agent type. So let's name the agent type. What type of agent could a customer, and there may be more than one answer. So I just like to kind of hear your thoughts on this. What type of agent could a customer service rep use to manage a complex issue? Yay! That's a good one. I think that's a really good one. That's one of those you're seeing. That's one of your biggest use cases that you're seeing right now. Who is aware of a use case happening right now in your organization where they are looking at what the customer service agent is doing and how they can better the interactions and so forth? Show of hands? Yeah. So next, what kind of agent could potentially create some code from a specification? What's that? I love it. And what kind of agent could test code developed by a software engineer? I think that one would work. See, and that's one of the things where you kind of get into, and I heard it from over here. I couldn't remember. Okay, thank you. That is one of those things where you can get into, like, it could be actually a lot of the different ones. Kind of just getting down to some, let's look at the last one. What kind of agent would likely be in place if any other agent was in production? It's a very generic question, isn't it? And I think it could be really any of them. And I think that's the key. But you do want to have, at minimum, a way to be able to observe, manage, and test these. And so that's the key, is understanding what they're doing. So you want to understand that if you put something in and it's automatically talking to your customer, that they're not offering your customer free services. It's not cursing at your customer. You really do want to understand those types of things and be able to test them. So that's really going to bring us into one of our next items. And as we come here, this is really the last slide I'm going to have as long as Sasha gives us. I kid you, but to answer questions and maybe talk about this a little bit. But what do you do now? What now? So if we think about what are some of the biggest use cases that you can think of right now? They're the biggest things that are very popular that use Agentic AI. Does anybody live in San Francisco? There might be other places too. Self-driving cars. So that uses really that same type of technology where it's learning. Another might be, has anybody ever gotten a drone delivery? I'm raising my hand, I haven't. But I hear that it happens. I hear that it happens. Those are the types of things that you're going to...
Campus, UCSD.
Yes?
Not too far. Apparently, that's how you get everything, your coffee, everything.
Really?
Is drone, yeah.
Which campus is this?
University of California, San Diego.
I love it.
I'm sure a lot of other campuses have that too.
Those Californians, man, they're always on the cutting edge, right? I love it. So you gotta, somebody back there was excited about that. I like it. So choose wisely. So think about, look within your organization. What are some use cases that are not going to be? You're not going to have it decide to turn on or off, a generating plant. But what are some of the use cases where this would make sense? What are some of the use cases where it wouldn't make sense? Where you put your focus on where it's going to make sense. Have a good testing strategy. Do a pilot. You gotta do a pilot. That is, I really think that you want to do that before you have any type of commitment. Govern. Make sure that you're understanding the risk involved. Ensuring that the company is aligned on usage. And then going back to all of this idea of you have a lot of people that might be consolidating. It's changing so much over time. So you're going to have to be able to say, okay, well, this isn't really valid anymore. This isn't viable anymore. How do we move from that? So have that exit strategy. Be prepared to have vendors and needs change as the space evolves. And definitely am interested in maybe, I don't know if we have time for a question or not, but.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, please, if you have any questions for those online, please write them in. Otherwise, we'll bring the mic over, yeah.
So Kim, last year, there was no mention of Agentic AI. It was all Gen AI.
Right.
So what's next year?
That's the cosmic AI.
That's cosmic.
It's cosmic.
Just
It's cosmic.
Come down and be out? Yeah.
It's going to. Are you a Star Trek fan?
No.
Well, then you're not going to get beamed up into the spaceship. No,
Gotcha.
it will be interesting. I do not know. Mm-hmm. It's that is what this wasn't. None of this was on the radar.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. That's why we just kind of get knocked over the head with it. And having people within our organization constantly being able to try to look and see what is emerging, what's coming. What's your question?
So Kim, I've had customers tell me their executives are saying, I want Gen AI and I want it now.
Right. What
are they asking for when an executive says that?
Exactly. No, I have the same question. And that's been one of the things is being able to, I love that, Eddie. That's a great question. That is one of the things is being able to gently talk about, okay, well, let's talk about what your use cases are. What would you like for it to do? And that has been because people are using, they're using everything interchangeably. And, we have things from our CIO or things like, hey, let's get data out of the box. And so, somebody raised their hand and said, what does it mean to get data out of the box? And, and he was able to explain it. And for him, it was the whole gamut. But that is his phrase that he gives it. So my best advice is, is saying, hey, what do you want it to do? Give me an example of a use case, and what are some of the high value ones?
I guess that's where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any executives in the utilities asking for specific things from a generative AI or agentic AI standpoint?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
the thing you just said.
Absolutely. So we have a CEO that's been in place, Chris Womack, for about, don't make me make that up, let's say 2 years now. And that's been one of the pushes. And he actually engaged a company to come and do interviews of the different people from the board and the management council, which were all of his direct reports. And they put together here are like your 20 or 30 different business cases. I will tell you an answer to what you're saying here. It's always good if you can get a vendor to tell them. I hate to say that. But hey, here are the 20 things you want. These are the ones that are really generative AI. But doing that, we were able to find the ones that they truly have interest in. And in these types of things, as you're moving forward, you've got to have that executive backing. If you don't have that executive backing, it's not going to go anywhere. And so there has to be buy-in, there has to be some governance, there has to be understanding of, here's kind of our contractual, obligations and what the expectations are. I've had people, as we've gotten, years past, like machine learning type projects, where you're getting to the end and they'll say, well, wait a second, this isn't 100%. I want 100%. I'm like, okay, lesson learned. You got to step back a little bit and say, are you okay with a little bit of, a little bit of ambiguity?